Minho Park stood in the memorial garden where Nari Bay had died 15 years ago. The crystal flowers still grew here, planted by Vorthak friends who had loved the human woman who taught them about kindness. Now they glowed softly in the light of the two moons, beautiful and eternal. Hyun Bay knelt beside her mother's grave marker, her hand resting on the stone. Behind her, the World Breaker device hummed with terrible energy, ready to turn the nearby star into a weapon that would destroy everything within 50 billion kilometers. She used to bring me here when I was small, Hyun said without looking up. She would tell me stories about the different species, about how wonderful it would be when we all lived together in peace. Your mother was a wise woman, Minho said carefully. He could see Sunho Bay standing at the edge of the garden, his face hollow with years of grief and anger. Wise, Hyun repeated. Yes, so wise that she died protecting the children of the EID species that would exile us. So wise that she believed in friendship with people who were planning to destroy our home. She died protecting children, Hyun, not species, not politics, children. Hyun finally looked up at him. Do you know how many children have died in the past 3 days because of my attacks? Minho felt his heart break at the pain in her voice. Tell me. 67,412, she said. I have the exact count. Every single one of them. Tears started falling down her face. I told my people not to target civilians. I told them to protect the young ones. But war is chaos, Captain. Good intentions don't stop falling buildings from crushing the innocent. Around them, both human fleets waited in tense silence. Admiral Kyung-nam's ships had the Worldbreaker device aimed at the Vorthak home system. Hyun's devoted fleet had weapons aimed at a dozen other worlds. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see if humanity would choose to become the monsters their enemies claimed they were. There's still time to stop, Minho said. The Confederation Council is meeting right now on Luna Base. Kethlan has presented the evidence about the Purest Alliance. They know the truth now. The truth? Hyun laughed bitterly. The truth is that they believed lies about us because it was convenient. The truth is that they watched us be exiled and did nothing because it was safe. The truth is that friendship means nothing when fear speaks louder. That's not the whole truth, came a new voice. Everyone turned to see 3 figures walking through the garden. They were Nexari, but they walked alone instead of in the connected groups that their species always moved in. The nanovirus had separated them from their hive mind, making them individuals for the first time in their lives. We know you, Hyun said, recognizing them. You're the children my father saved during the evacuation. Yes, said the first Nexari. We've spent 15 years trying to understand why he risked his life for us when his own world was burning. The second Nexari stepped forward. When your virus cut us from the hive mind, we were terrified. We had never been alone in our thoughts before. But then we remembered something. What? Minho asked. We remembered what it felt like to be individuals that day, the third Nexari said. Your father didn't save us because we were part of a hive. He saved us because each of us was a person worth saving. Sunho Bay walked toward his daughter, his face wet with tears. I had forgotten that, he said. In all my anger, I had forgotten why I saved them. Dad? Hyun stood up, confused. Your mother didn't die for politics or species or alliances, Sunho said. She died because she saw 3 scared children and couldn't let them be hurt. That's what humans do, Hyun. That's what makes us human. But they betrayed us, Hyun said. They exiled us. They lied about us. Some of them did, Minho agreed. But look around you. He gestured to the memorial garden. As they watched, more figures emerged from the shadows. Vorthak scientists led by Kethlan, whose crystal body now bore scars from years of fighting to prove human innocence. Luminal energy, beings who had somehow survived the quantum disruptors, their light dim with grief for their dead friends. We came as soon as we could, Kethlan said, his musical voice filled with sadness. We've been trying to reach you for days. The Council has voted to reverse the exile. The Purist Alliance leaders are being arrested. Humans are welcome in the galaxy again. Too late. Admiral Kyung-nam's voice came over the communications system. 15 years too late. The World-Breaker device is charging. In 10 minutes, the Vorthak system dies, and then we move on to the next one. Uncle, no, Hayon said into her communication device. There are billions of innocent people in that system. They should have thought of that before they threw us away, Kyung replied. Hayon looked at the assembled aliens, then at her father, then at Minho. They really didn't know, did they? Most of them really believed the lies. Fear makes people do terrible things, Minho said. But so does love, when it's pointed in the wrong direction. I've killed so many people, Hayon whispered. In my mother's name, I've become the monster they said we were. No, said the first Nexari child. You became something else. You became what humans become when their devotion is broken and turned into a weapon. Your mother's devotion was to protecting life, Sunho said to his daughter. Mine became devoted to protecting you. But I forgot that protecting you meant teaching you to be better than our enemies, not worse. Hayon walked to the control panel for the World-Breaker device. The terrible weapon hummed with enough energy to destroy a star and everything around it. If I shut this down, she said, how do we know they won't betray us again? We don't, Minho said honestly. Trust is a leap of faith. It always has been. But if I don't shut it down, I'll be exactly what the Purist Alliance said humans were. A contamination. A disease that destroys everything it touches. Hayon's hand hovered over the shutdown controls. Around her, humans and aliens waited to see what choice she would make. In the distance, two human fleets faced each other with weapons. Charged and ready. What would Mom do? She asked her father. Sunho thought about his wife, the woman who had died protecting alien children even as her own world burned. She would choose to save lives, even if it meant forgiving people who didn't deserve forgiveness. Even if it meant trusting people who had already betrayed her once. Especially then, Sunho said, because that's the only way the cycle of hurt ever stops. Hayon pressed the shutdown button. The World-Breaker device powered down with a sound like a giant sighing. Across both human fleets, weapons went offline. The immediate threat of genocide passed. But Hayon wasn't finished. She walked to the center of the memorial garden and activated a different device, one that Minho recognized with growing horror. Hayon, what are you doing? The galaxy will never trust humans again after what we've done, she said calmly. There will always be fear, always be suspicion. Someone has to pay the price for all the death and suffering. You don't have to. Yes, I do. She looked at the assembled aliens. I'm going to destroy myself and this entire memorial site. Let my death be the end of human anger. Let it be the price we pay for peace. Hayon, no. Sunho ran toward her, but she held up a hand to stop him. Dad, you saved alien children when you could have saved only humans. That's who we really are. That's what we need to remember. She smiled at him, and for a moment she looked like the little girl who used to sing Vorthak songs in the park. Tell the galaxy that human devotion can build as well as destroy. Tell them that some bonds really are eternal. The explosion was small but complete. When the light faded, Heian was gone, and with her the last of the weapons that could have destroyed worlds. In her place, the crystal flowers her mother had planted began to grow brighter, as if drawing energy from her sacrifice. Sun Ho-Bei knelt where his daughter had stood, crying for the second time in 15 years. She didn't have to die, he said. Yes, she did, said Kethlan gently. Not because she was guilty, but because she loved you all too much to let you carry the weight of what was done in anger. 1 year later, Minho Park stood in the same memorial garden, but now it was different. Humans and aliens worked together to tend the crystal flowers that had spread across the entire planet. Where New Soul Colony had once been, a new city was, growing, one built by all species working together. The 3 Nexari who had been saved by Sun Ho-Bei now served as ambassadors, teaching other species about the individual worth that humans had shown them. Kethlan led a new organization dedicated to preventing the kind of lies that had started the war. In the center of the garden, a new monument stood. It showed a human woman protecting children of different species, with words carved in every galactic language. Some bonds are eternal, some love transcends death, some devotion can heal even the deepest wounds. Sun Ho-Bei visited the monument every day. He was older now and tired, but he had found a new purpose. He taught young beings of all species about the dangers of letting devotion become hatred, and about the courage it took to choose forgiveness over revenge. "Do you think she was right?" he asked Minho one evening as they sat together watching the sunset. "Do you think her sacrifice was worth it?" Minho looked around at the mixed species children playing in the gardens, at the humans and aliens working together to build something beautiful from the ashes of war. "Ask me in 100 years," he said, "when these children are old." The first ships appeared over Seoul at dawn. Do-Yun was drinking coffee when the sky turned dark with metal. He dropped his cup and watched it shatter on the kitchen floor. The pieces looked small compared to what was coming. Commander Thexvak stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the blue planet spin below. Earth looked peaceful from space. Green and blue mixed together like all the other worlds he had conquered. His red eyes studied the readings on his screen. The humans had simple weapons. Their cities were spread out and easy to target. This would be quick work. "Begin the bombardment," Thexvak ordered. The first beams of energy hit New York, then London, then Tokyo. The buildings turned to dust in seconds. Millions of people ran through the streets, but there was nowhere to go. The alien weapons were too fast and too strong. Mira was working at the communications center when the attack began. She watched her screens go dark one by one as cities around the world stopped sending signals. Her hands shook as she tried to call her family. The phone lines were dead. Everything was dead. The ground forces landed 3 hours later. They came in black ships that made no sound. The aliens were tall and thin with gray skin. They wore armor that seemed to bend light around them. Their weapons could kill a human from a mile away. Jinwoo hid in the subway tunnels under Seoul with 50 other survivors. He was only 22, but he had studied military history in college. He knew what this was. This was invasion. This was conquest. This was the end of the world as they knew it. "We need to organize," he whispered to the others. "We need to plan." An old woman shook her head. "Plan what? Did you see what they did to the city? There's nothing left to plan." But Jinwoo was wrong about one thing. There was still something left. There were still people, and people could think. People could adapt. People could fight. The aliens set up their control zones quickly. They had done this before on 17 other worlds. First, destroy the big cities to break their spirit. Second, control the important places like airports and power plants. Third, wait for the survivors to give up. Sub-Commander Veltar walked through the ruins of what used to be downtown Seoul. His boots crunched on broken glass and concrete. The humans they captured looked broken. They cried and begged and asked for mercy. This was normal. This was how it always went. But something felt different. The humans looked at them with too much attention. They watched how the aliens moved, how their weapons worked, how their ships landed. Most conquered species just looked down at the ground in defeat. Do-Yun crawled through the wreckage of his neighborhood. His house was gone. His family was gone. But his brain still worked. He was an engineer. He built things. He fixed things. Maybe he could break things too. He found other survivors hiding in the ruins. Sunho had been a chemical engineer before the world ended. Nari had been a teacher, but now she looked at the alien weapons with the eyes of someone who wanted to understand how they worked. "They're not gods," Do-Hyun said to the small group that gathered around him. "They're just people with better tools." "Better tools that destroyed our entire civilization in one day," Sunho replied. "So we learn to use their tools," Do-Hyun said. "Or we make new ones." The aliens found this conversation amusing when their listening devices picked it up. Thexvac read the reports and laughed. Humans talking about fighting back. It was cute. They all talked about fighting at first. Then reality set in. But the reality that set in was not what Thexvac expected. Hyun had been a logistics coordinator for a shipping company. She knew how to move things from place to place without anyone noticing. Now she moved people and supplies through the ruins. The aliens controlled the big roads, but they didn't know about the old sewer systems or the subway tunnels that were still intact. Yona had worked with computers before the invasion. The alien technology was different, but computers were computers. Code was code. She started to figure out how their communication systems worked. "They're using quantum encryption," she told Do-Yun. "But the base layer is still binary. I think I can break into their local networks." Thexvac received his first real report 3 weeks after the invasion. The humans were not behaving like other conquered species. They were not forming the usual refugee camps where they waited for food and protection. Instead, they were disappearing into the ruins and the wilderness. "Sir," Veltar reported, "we're having trouble tracking the population. Our estimates say there should be 2 million survivors in the Seoul area, but we can only account for half that number." "They're hiding," Thexvac said. "Let them hide. Winter will drive them out." But winter was still months away, and the humans were not just hiding. They were planning. Jinwoo had found more people with useful skills. Mira could still work with communication equipment, even if it was broken. Junho knew about nuclear power plants. Taehyun had been in the army for 2 years before he became a teacher. They met in secret in the deep tunnels under the city. They drew maps on the walls and marked where the aliens had set up their bases. They counted ships and weapons and soldiers. "What are we doing?" Sora asked. She was the youngest of them at 19, but she had studied strategy and tactics in school. "We can't fight them directly. They have technology we can't match." "We don't fight them directly," Do-Hyun said. "We make them wish they had never come here." The first real attack came 6 weeks after the invasion. The aliens had set up a fuel depot outside what used to be Busan. They thought it was safe because they had guards and sensors and force fields. They didn't expect humans to come from underground. The explosion could be seen from 20 miles away. The aliens lost 3 months of fuel supplies and 2 transport ships. More importantly, they lost the feeling that Earth was secure. Thexvac stared at the reports with growing concern. This was not normal. Conquered species did not organize effective attacks so quickly. They did not show this level of tactical knowledge. They did not seem to learn from each battle and get better. "Sir," Veltar said, "I think we need to request additional support from the High Command." Thexavac's pride made him hesitate. He had conquered 17 worlds without asking for help. Earth was supposed to be easy. The humans had primitive weapons and no space travel. They should have surrendered by now, but they had not surrendered. They had disappeared into their ruined cities and broken land. They had taken their knowledge, and their anger and their refusal to give up, and they had turned it into something dangerous, something the Valthron Empire had never seen before, something that would change everything. 3 months after the invasion, Sunho stood in what used to be a chemistry lab at Seoul National University. The building was half destroyed, but the basement still had equipment that worked. He mixed chemicals that the aliens had never heard of and created explosives that their sensors could not detect. "This will burn through their armor," he told Nari, who was carefully writing down the formula. "But we need to get close to use it." Nari had learned to think like a soldier. Before the invasion, she had taught children how to read. Now she taught adults how to kill. The irony was not lost on her, but she pushed the sadness away. There would be time for sadness later, if there was a later. The aliens had made their first mistake by underestimating human adaptability. Their military databases said that primitive species needed years to learn advanced tactics. Humans were learning in weeks. Commander Thexvac walked through his command center on the flagship. The walls showed maps of Earth with red dots marking alien positions and blue dots marking human activity. There were too many blue dots. They appeared faster than his forces could eliminate them. "The humans are communicating across long distances," his intelligence officer reported. "We block their radio signals, but they find new ways to send messages. They use light signals from mirrors. They use underground cables we didn't know existed. They even use birds." "Birds?" Thexvac could not hide his surprise. "They attach messages to the legs of flying creatures and release them at night. Our air patrols cannot track every small animal." This was embarrassing. The Valthron Empire controlled space travel and energy weapons, but they were being outmaneuvered by humans using birds. Hyon had organized a supply network that stretched across 3 continents. She used abandoned subway systems, old mining, tunnels and natural caves to move weapons and food to resistance groups. The aliens controlled the surface, but underground belonged to humanity. "The key is redundancy," she explained to her lieutenants. "If they find one route, we have 5 others. If they destroy one cache, we have 10 more. They think like conquerors. We think like survivors." The difference was important. Conquerors expected to win through superior force. Survivors expected to lose most battles, but win the war by refusing to quit. Yona had made a breakthrough with alien technology. She had learned to hack into their local communication networks by hiding her signals inside their own transmissions. The aliens never suspected that their own data streams were carrying human intelligence. "I can see their patrol schedules," she reported to Do-Hyun. "I know when they change guards and where they send reinforcements. I can even make their automated systems give false reports." Do-Hyun smiled for the first time since the invasion began. "Then it's time to hurt them." The attacks began simultaneously across the globe. In New York, the ruins of the subway system erupted in explosions that destroyed 3 alien command posts. In London, human fighters used stolen alien weapons to ambush patrol teams. In Tokyo, resistance cells coordinated strikes that eliminated an entire supply convoy. Subcommander Veltar studied the reports with growing alarm. The humans were not fighting like desperate survivors anymore. They were fighting like professional soldiers who had been training for years. "Sir," he reported to Thexvac, "these attacks show tactical coordination that should be impossible for a recently conquered species. They're using our own technology against us. They're predicting our responses and preparing countermeasures." Thexvac felt something he had never experienced in 17 previous conquests: doubt. "How long do we estimate until they exhaust their resources and surrender?" Veltar hesitated. "Sir, I don't think they're planning to surrender." The breakthrough came when Junho figured out how alien power systems worked. He had been a nuclear engineer before the invasion, and he recognized the principles even though the technology was more advanced. They use controlled fusion, but the containment system is similar to our reactor designs, he explained to the technical team. "If we can overload their power cores, their shields fail. If their shields fail, they're vulnerable to conventional weapons." Mira had established communication networks that spanned continents. She used equipment salvaged from destroyed cities and alien technology that Yeona had hacked. For the first time since the invasion, human resistance groups could coordinate activities on a global scale. "Beijing reports successful strike on alien fuel depot," she announced. "Moscow has eliminated 2 transport ships. Australian forces have captured an alien weapon stockpile." The war was changing. The aliens still controlled the major cities and strategic locations, but they were losing the countryside. More importantly, they were losing the initiative. Thexvac called for additional forces from the High Command. The response came back within hours. "Conquest proceeding too slowly. Increase pressure on native population. Use Standard Protocol 7. Standard Protocol 7 meant systematic elimination of population centers until the survivors surrendered unconditionally. It had worked on every previous world, but every previous world had not been Earth. Taehyun had been gathering intelligence on alien weaknesses for months. He noticed that they relied heavily on automated systems and predictable patrol patterns. They were efficient, but efficiency could be exploited. "They think like machines," he told Sora during one of their planning sessions. "Machines follow programs. If we can predict the program, we can beat the machine." Sora had been analyzing alien tactical manuals that Yeona had stolen from their networks. "They have procedures for everything, but they don't adapt quickly when the procedures fail. They request new orders instead of thinking for themselves." This was the key insight that changed everything. The aliens were individually superior to humans in technology and physical capability, but they were not superior in adaptability and creative thinking. The humans began to set traps that exploited alien predictability. When patrols followed their programmed routes, they found roads blocked by rubble that forced them into kill zones. When transport ships landed at designated coordinates, they discovered that the landing zones had been mined. Most importantly, the humans learned to disappear. When alien forces arrived to investigate an attack, they found empty buildings and abandoned positions. The attackers had melted away into the civilian population or disappeared into underground networks. Minsu had become an expert at moving refugees through war zones. He knew which buildings were still safe for hiding and which routes the aliens had not discovered. Under his coordination, entire populations could relocate overnight without being detected. "We're not trying to hold territory," he explained to new resistance members. "Territory doesn't matter. People matter. Keep the people alive and mobile, and we can fight forever." Hana had taken charge of surface operations in the Seoul area. She planned attacks that were designed not just to destroy alien assets, but to force them to change their behavior patterns. Every successful operation made the aliens more cautious and less efficient. "Make them afraid of their own shadows," she told her fighters. "Make them question every decision. Make them spend more time looking over their shoulders than looking forward." The psychological warfare was working. Alien patrol teams began requesting backup for routine missions. Transport pilots demanded fighter escorts for supply runs. Base commanders installed additional sensors and defensive systems that consumed resources and personnel. Commander Thexvac reviewed casualty reports and resource expenditure data. The numbers did not make sense. His forces were winning every direct engagement, but they were losing the war. Human resistance was growing stronger instead of weaker. "How is this possible?" he demanded from his staff. Intelligence Officer Kev Mole had been studying human behavior patterns. "Sir, I believe we misunderstood their psychology. Most species fight to preserve what they have. Humans seem to fight to deny us what we want. They care more about making us fail than about their own survival." This was a terrifying realization. Every previous conquest had succeeded because the native species eventually decided that survival under alien rule was better than death in hopeless resistance. But humans seemed to prefer death to surrender. "Sir," Veltar added, "there's something else. Our intelligence intercepts suggest they're not just fighting for Earth anymore. They're fighting to prove something. They're fighting to send a message." Thexvac felt cold despite the controlled atmosphere of his ship. "What message?" "That we can be beaten." The implications of this statement would not become clear for several more months, but the seed was planted. Earth was not just another conquest. Earth was becoming a symbol, and symbols, once created, were very difficult to destroy. The humans had learned to fight. Now they were learning to teach others how to fight. The war was about to change in ways that would horrify the Valthran Empire. Research specialist Kevmol had not slept in 3 days. His eyes burned from staring at ancient data files in the deepest archives of the Valthran fleet. Commander Thexvac had ordered him to find any historical precedent for human behavior. What he found made his blood run cold. The file was marked with the highest security classification. It was 5,000 years old and written in ancient Vaelthron script that few modern scholars could read. The title translated roughly to "The Korthak Extinction Event, Final Strategic Assessment." Kevmol read the document twice before he believed what he was seeing. Then he ran to Thexvac's quarters without requesting permission. "Commander," he gasped, bursting through the door. "We need to talk. Immediately." Thexvac looked up from his tactical displays with irritation. "This better be important, Kevmol. Sir, the humans aren't the first species to behave this way." The archive document told a story that had been deliberately buried in Vaelthron military history. 5,000 years ago, during the early expansion of their empire, they had encountered the Korthak civilization. The Korthak had been technologically advanced, but militarily weaker than the Vaelthrons. The conquest had started normally. Orbital bombardment, ground invasion, occupation of major cities. But then the Korthak had done something unprecedented. They had refused to surrender, even when their defeat was certain. They destroyed their own worlds. Kevmol read from the ancient report. They contaminated their planets with biological weapons that made them uninhabitable. They eliminated their own populations rather than live under foreign rule. And most importantly, they broadcast their resistance techniques to every known civilization in the galaxy. Thexvok felt something like fear creeping into his mind. What happened to the Korthak? They went extinct, Kevmol replied. But their final broadcasts reached 47 different worlds. Within 50 years, the Valthran Empire faced resistance movements on every conquered planet. It took us 3 centuries to regain full control, and we never expanded at the same rate again. On Earth, Wusung was leading the largest surviving human enclave through the ruins of what had once been London. His group had grown to include refugees from across Europe, but they were running out of safe hiding places. The alien patrols were getting better at detecting underground settlements. "We need to move again," he told his lieutenants. "They'll find this location within a week." "Where?" asked Jisu, who had been coordinating communications with other resistance groups. "We've already abandoned 6 different sites. The contamination zones are spreading, and the aliens control everything else." Wusung looked at the maps they had drawn on the tunnel walls. Red areas showed alien strongholds. Yellow areas showed radiation contamination. Green areas showed chemical contamination. Black areas showed total destruction. There was very little white space left. "It doesn't matter where we go," he said quietly. "We're not trying to survive anymore. We're trying to finish the broadcast." The broadcast had been Seong's idea. As the contamination made Earth increasingly uninhabitable, he had proposed using the planet's remaining resources for one final transmission. Not a plea for help, but an instruction manual for resistance. Every tactic we've developed, every weakness we've discovered in their forces, every psychological strategy that has worked against them, he explained to the Council of Resistance leaders. We send it all to every civilized world in the galaxy. Yunji had been working with technical teams to compile the information into formats that could be understood by different species. The package included tactical manuals, technical specifications for improvised weapons, psychological profiles of Valthran forces, and most importantly, proof that resistance was possible. "The key is hope," she explained. "Every conquered world thinks the Valthrons are invincible. We show them that they're not. We show them exactly how to fight back." Commander Thexvok studied the ancient Korthak records with growing horror. The historical parallels were exact. A technologically inferior species choosing extinction over surrender, systematic destruction of planetary resources, and final broadcasts that inspired galaxy-wide rebellion. How many worlds rebelled after the Korthak broadcasts? He asked Kevmol. "All of them, sir. Every single conquered world experienced uprising attempts within 5 years. Most were successful." Sub-Commander Veltar entered the chamber with new intelligence reports. "Sir, we've detected massive energy signatures from the human communication installations. They're preparing to broadcast something on all frequencies simultaneously." Thexvok felt the weight of history pressing down on him. "Can we stop them?" "We can destroy their transmission equipment, but they have backup systems hidden across the planet. And, sir," Veltar hesitated, "our intelligence suggests they want us to attack their broadcasting stations. They've turned them into traps." This was the nightmare scenario. The humans had learned enough about Valthran psychology to predict their responses and plan accordingly. Every alien reaction was being anticipated and countered by people who no longer cared about their own survival. Jeho was coordinating the final phase of human resistance from a bunker deep beneath the Himalayan mountains. The facility had been a military command center before the invasion, and it still had enough power to run the communication equipment for several more weeks. Global status report, he requested from his coordinators. North American resistance has eliminated 17 alien supply depots and contaminated 3 major river systems, reported one coordinator. European resistance has destroyed 12 transport hubs and collapsed the Channel Tunnel. Asian resistance has rendered 4 major cities uninhabitable and eliminated the alien fuel processing facilities. Australian and South American resistance? Jeho asked. Australian resistance has poisoned the mining operations the aliens were using for rare earth minerals. South American resistance has burned the Amazon rainforest to deny them oxygen production facilities. Jeho closed his eyes. The Amazon rainforest. Humanity was destroying the lungs of their own planet to deny resources to their conquerors. The level of determination required for such an action was beyond anything he had thought possible. And the broadcast preparation? 73% complete. We have confirmation from relay stations on 6 continents. Once we begin transmission, the signal will reach approximately 4,000 star systems within 2 months. Yaren had volunteered to be the voice of humanity's final message. She was a former news anchor who had somehow maintained her composure even as her world died around her. Her calm, clear delivery would carry humanity's last words to the stars. "What? Should I tell them?" she asked Jeho. "Tell them the truth. Tell them that freedom is possible. Tell them exactly how to fight for it." Commander Thexvak called an emergency conference with the High Command. The communication took several minutes to establish across interstellar distances, but when the connection was made, Thexvak's words were precise and urgent. Request immediate authorization to withdraw all forces from Earth. The High Command. Representative's image flickered on the communication screen. "Explain the nature of this request, Commander." "The human species has chosen collective extinction rather than surrender. They are systematically destroying planetary resources and preparing to broadcast resistance techniques to conquered worlds. Throughout the galaxy, historical precedent suggests this will trigger empire-wide rebellion." Historical precedent? Kevmol stepped forward with the ancient archive documents. 5,000 years ago, the Korthak species employed identical tactics. Their final broadcasts caused rebellion on every conquered world and nearly destroyed our empire. The High Command representative studied the historical records with growing concern. "Assessment of threat level?" "Critical," Thexvak replied. "If the human broadcast is successful, we will face coordinated resistance on 17 worlds simultaneously. Our occupation forces are not sufficient to suppress empire-wide rebellion." "Can the broadcast be prevented?" "No, sir. They have redundant systems hidden across the planet. More importantly, they want us to attack their broadcast facilities. Our intelligence suggests they've prepared them as traps designed to maximize alien casualties while ensuring the broadcast continues." The High Command representative consulted with others outside the communication range. When he returned, his expression was grim. "Commander Thexvak, you are authorized to begin immediate withdrawal of all forces from Earth. Implement scorched Earth protocols to deny the humans any remaining resources that could support their broadcast efforts." But it was too late for scorched Earth protocols. The humans had already scorched their own Earth. They had turned their planet into a weapon aimed at the heart of the Valthran Empire. Donghyun stood in the main broadcast facility watching technicians make final adjustments to the transmission equipment. Through the reinforced windows, he could see the orange glow of fires that had been burning for weeks. The sky was the color of rust and smoke. Final systems check complete, Sung reported. We're ready to begin transmission. How long will the signal take to reach the farthest conquered worlds? Dong-yun asked. 8 weeks for the most distant systems, but the closest worlds will receive it within days. Dong-yun nodded. In 8 weeks, he would be dead. Yaren's voice echoed across the galaxy with the clarity of truth and the weight of sacrifice. In the deep underground broadcast facility, her words were being transmitted to 4,000 star systems simultaneously. She spoke into the microphone, as if she was talking directly to every oppressed being in the universe. This is Earth's final transmission, she said calmly. My name is Yaren, and I am speaking for the human species in our last hours. We want you to know that resistance is possible. We want to show you exactly how to fight back. On the flagship above Earth's burning surface, Commander Thexvac watched his communication systems light up with incoming reports from across the Velthron Empire. The reports all said the same thing. Conquered worlds were receiving the human, broadcast and responding to it. Sir, Sub-Commander Veltar reported with barely controlled panic. We have confirmation of reception on Kepler 442b, the former Zelthon homeworld. Local resistance groups are already analyzing the tactical information. And the others? All 17 conquered worlds are receiving the signal. Our intelligence estimates that within 72 hours, every resistance movement in the Empire will have access to human military techniques. Thexvac stared at the tactical display showing Earth's surface. Fires burned across entire continents. Radiation readings showed contamination levels that would persist for centuries. The humans had turned their beautiful blue-green world into a hellscape of poison and destruction, and they had done it with surgical precision, ensuring that their sacrifice would inspire others. Sung stood beside the transmission equipment, monitoring signal strength and reception confirmations from across the galaxy. His screens showed green lights for successful transmission to dozens of star systems. Each green light represented hope for millions of enslaved beings. Signal strength holding steady, he reported to Dong-yun. We're getting confirmation receipts from relay stations in the Andromeda approach. The message is spreading beyond our galaxy. Dong-yun looked through the reinforced window at the sky above Seoul. Alien ships were withdrawing to orbit, abandoning their ground positions as Earth became too hostile to occupy. The victory was hollow because there would be no humans left to celebrate it, but it was still victory. How much longer can we maintain transmission? He asked. The reactor has enough fuel for 6 more days. After that, we switch to backup power. Cells, they'll last another week. And after that? Sung smiled sadly. After that, it won't matter. The message will already be spreading faster than they can stop it. On Kepler 442b, former home of the Zelthon species, Resistance leader Vexthon listened to the human broadcast with growing excitement. His people had been conquered 8 years ago and had learned to accept their fate. But the human voice was teaching them that acceptance was not the only option. Listen to this tactical analysis, he told his cell members, playing back part of Yaren's transmission. They explain exactly how to exploit Valthran patrol patterns. They show how to turn alien technology against them. They prove that the Empire can be hurt. Similar scenes were playing out on 17 different worlds. Species that had given up hope were learning that resistance was possible. More importantly, they were learning exactly how to resist effectively. Intelligence. Officer Kevmol brought Thexvac increasingly desperate reports from across the Empire. Sir, we've lost contact with the occupation force on Proxima Centauri B. The local Keplerians have overrun 3 supply depots using tactics identical to those described in the human broadcast. And the others? Uprisings reported on 7 worlds. Coordinated resistance activities on 4 more. The remaining worlds show increased underground activity and communication between resistance cells. Thexvac felt the empire he had served faithfully for 3 centuries beginning to crumble around him. How long until we lose control completely? Conservative estimate, 6 months. If the rebellions coordinate with each other using human communication, techniques, possibly less. Yunji was in the final phase of compiling humanity's tactical database. Working with only hours of life support remaining, she organized thousands of pages of resistance techniques, alien vulnerability assessments, and psychological warfare strategies into a format that any species could understand and implement. The key sections are complete, she reported to J-Ho. Guerrilla warfare tactics, improvised weapons manufacturing, communication security, supply chain disruption, and psychological operations against occupying forces. What about the cultural sections? J-Ho asked. Completed yesterday. We've included analysis of Veilthran psychology, their decision-making processes, and their organizational weaknesses. Any resistance movement that studies this information will know their enemies better than their enemies know themselves. J-Ho nodded approvingly. Even in death, humanity would be teaching others how to fight for freedom. Yeren continued her broadcast, her voice never wavering despite the knowledge that she would be dead within days. She had been speaking for 18 hours straight, reading from technical manuals and tactical guides prepared by the Resistance Network. The aliens rely heavily on automated systems, she explained to her invisible audience of billions. These systems follow predictable patterns that can be exploited. Here are the specific frequency signatures to look for in their sensor networks. On the Veilthran flagship, Thexvac received a priority communication from the High Command. The face that appeared on his screen was that of Fleet Admiral Zorthek, Supreme Military Commander of the Empire. Commander Thexvac, provide immediate status report on the Earth situation. Sir, the human broadcast is being received across 17 conquered worlds. Local resistance movements are already implementing human tactical recommendations. We are facing the possibility of empire-wide coordinated rebellion. Assessment of our ability to suppress simultaneous uprisings? Thexvac consulted his strategic analyses. Impossible, sir. Our occupation forces are designed to maintain control over individually conquered worlds. We do not have sufficient resources to suppress coordinated rebellion on multiple worlds simultaneously. Admiral Zorthek was silent for long moments. What is your recommended course of action? Immediate withdrawal from Earth and deployment of all available forces to prevent the spread of rebellion to unconquered worlds. We must contain this before it reaches beyond the current Empire boundaries. Approved. Begin immediate evacuation of all forces from Earth. Implement total communication blackout to prevent further transmission. But the blackout would not matter. The human broadcast had been running for 36 hours. The message was already spreading through underground networks on 17 worlds, being translated into dozens of languages and copied onto thousands of data storage devices. Wusung led the European resistance survivors in their final mission. With only days of life support remaining in their underground shelter, they were broadcasting locally to ensure the global transmission continued even if the main facility was destroyed. London relay station operational, he reported to Jisoo. We're amplifying the main signal and adding our own tactical supplements based on local operations against alien forces. What's the status of the other regional relays? Moscow is still broadcasting. Beijing went dark 6 hours ago, but they transmitted for 42 hours before losing power. Sydney's signal ended this morning, but they covered the entire Pacific region. Each relay station had been operated by people who knew they were going to die, but they had stayed at their posts, ensuring that humanity's final message reached every corner of the galaxy. Commander Thexvac stood on the bridge of his flagship as the last transport ships lifted off from Earth's surface. Below, the planet burned with fires that would continue for months. Above, his fleet prepared to abandon the most costly conquest in Velthron history. Final casualty report, he requested from his staff. 1,700 personnel lost. 4 capital ships damaged, beyond repair. Resource expenditure exceeded total value of planetary assets by a factor of 8. The numbers told the story of humanity's victory. They had made the conquest of Earth so expensive that the Velthrons had lost more than they could possibly gain. But the real cost was yet to be calculated. Dong Yun spoke into the communication system for the last time as Earth's primary broadcast facility prepared to lose power. His words were simple, but carried the weight of his species' sacrifice. 2. Anyone listening to this message, remember what we have shown you. Remember that freedom is worth any price. Remember that resistance is always possible. Remember that even the strongest empire can be defeated if the cost of victory is made too high to bear. He paused, looking around the control room where his friends and fellow resistance fighters sat at their stations. They had given everything for this moment. We chose to die free rather than live as slaves. We chose to deny our enemies the fruits of conquest rather than submit to their rule. We hope that you will make the same choice when your time comes. And to the Valthran Empire, if you are listening, you came to our world expecting easy victory. You found only the determination of a species that refuses to be conquered. We have taught the galaxy that you can be beaten. Every world you have enslaved now knows your weaknesses. Your empire built on fear and submission is ended. We have seen to that.